Good day, my name is Bobby Harrell. I am the Business Development Manager for Strand Lighting, primarily focusing on systems. Today we're going to talk about dimming and power distribution. So a typical theatrical installation for the year around the year 2010 would be very heavily dimmer based. So the traditional loads, majority were incandescent. There were also ballast and fluorescents and Mark 10 and things like that. But you generally needed a dimmed load. Our products available for that were the C21 EC21 racks, as well as our A21 wall-mounted dimmer cabinets. Push forward just 4 years to 2014, and now we have quite a bit of LED technology sources. So now it's a much more involved field to not only have incandescent loads and fluorescents, but mains dimmable LED, LED that was DMX driven, the need for reverse phase dimming, and at that point our A21 cabinet was probably the more flexible product because of the IGBT modules that were available. Now we're going to talk about different ways to dim a lamp. Strand Lighting does manufacture two different types of dimming technology. There are SCR dimmers, or forward phase dimmers, and IGBT dimmers, which can be configured to be either forward or reverse phase. The flexibility of this allows the specifier to match the right technology to the project. So with forward phase, you could power incandescent, magnetic ballast transformers. For that, you could use either SCR technology, which is the more traditional dimming technology, or IGBT. If one needed reverse phase, then you had to go with IGBT technology. This worked for most LEDs. It also would work perfectly fine for incandescent and electronic transformers and ballasts. For a very long time, since the 50s, lighting manufacturers have built forward phase control dimmers that were based upon SCRs, or silicon controlled rectifiers, as well as TRIACs. This technology has really dominated the dimming technology. Strand is the company that actually invented the SCR dimmer. We have shipped well in excess of 2 million dimmer type modules. So there are a lot of installations of those SCR dimmers out in the field. So a typical forward face control waveform. If you're in Europe, going to be probably primarily dealing with a 50 hertz signal, where in the US it's primarily a 60 hertz signal. This is essentially showing 2 cycles. The forward phase, there's going to be a bit at the beginning where it's providing no voltage at all, and then it's going to spike way up or down depending upon which side of the half cycle you're on, and then it fades to an additional period of time where there's no voltage at all. And again, this is going to happen 50 or 60 times per second, depending upon where you are in the world. This worked perfectly fine for incandescent devices. This is generally called a leading edge transformer application, and the process simply repeats over and over and over. So that's going to give you the chopped waveform. Now moving into IGBTs. This stands for insulated gate bipolar transistor. The technology has been around since the 80s. Toyota used it in its Prius for inverter control of the AC motors, and this has been adapted to for use in the entertainment dimming world. So with a reverse phase control waveform, it literally just reverses the curve. It looks more like a shark's fin. So you have a bit of time at the beginning of the cycle where there's no voltage, and then it ramps up. I have seen people do experiments with some simpler like residential dimming technology in their basements, where they'll have an incandescent on a forward phase and then on a reverse phase, and you can actually see the timing difference. LEDs, there's a lot of variation in the way LEDs respond to these, but this is one of the reasons why this trailing edge reverse form works better for LEDs, is because of the ramp up that it gets toward the beginning of the phase, and then that the chop at the end is they just work better with this type of a waveform. If you wind up home supply store, Home Depot or Lowe's, looking for a wall dimmer for this, you may see them labeled as other things, but you're basically talking about a reverse phase waveform in order to properly control your LEDs. So this is just a little waveform comparison between forward phase, reverse phase, and what you get from the utility company, which you see is a fairly uniform sine wave. So the typical AC cycle, you've got the half that's on the top, and then across the bottom, and in the middle is the zero crossing. They're basically 3 cycles in this sine wave, and each of those portions at the top of the bottom are called a half cycle. And the peak-to-peak value is defined by the difference between its positive peak and negative peak, and the utility companies will vary this, which will essentially vary the voltage that's coming into the facility. And that's how they modify that based upon their needs. So SCR dimming has always been economically priced. It does have a lot of heat loss and voltage drop over the run of the circuit. These SCR dimming racks generally require fans and often are mounted into environmentally controlled dedicated rooms to control the noise as well as the temperature. IGBT dimming, whether it's in forward or reverse phase control, it is quiet. They can be convection cooled, and there's also minimum voltage drop over the circuit run. The C21 and EC21 dimming rack is our traditional dimmer racks. They are available in a half rack size for 24 modules or a full rack size with 48 modules. Each module is going to have contain 2 dimmers or relays. There's 800, 1600, and 2400 amp rack-to-rack bus bar kits available. The 16 and 2400 require the use of a power bay. It is in a 19-inch equipment enclosure that are available to match equipment racks, and you can get either SCR or IGBT dimming module technology for your rack. The C21 and EC21 is a network-centric processor. You can have 2 processors within a rack so that you have a main and a backup. These can be configured from a web browser on any PC, and they do support the traditional ones support ShowNet, DMX512, and contact closures. The new processors that we've gone to for the upgrades now offer more network protocols like streaming ACN. So there are different kinds of modules that are available. There are power through modules, standard SCR modules for incandescent loads and Mark 10 fluorescents. You also have IGBT modules, as we've talked about, which are the reverse phase for incandescent, low voltage, and LED loads. So the processor does contain a built-in web server, and it is capable of serving up web pages for product configuration as well as dimmer and rack reporting information. We do offer CD80SV processor upgrades, so the modules themselves in the C21, EC21 dimmer racks tend to last for a very long time. We have, in North America at least, we have many installations that have lasted for 30 years with proper cleaning and maintenance on these racks. However, the processors themselves either may need to be upgraded more frequently, or there's simply a desire to add the latest technology for the network protocols. So they can be upgraded due to the compatibility of the C21 processor crate, because they are physically the same size. Modules themselves, there are a lot of flexibility between SCR modules, dual SCR, and relay modules. We even have three-way modules for constant power, relay power, and dimming modules. Something that has become more popular is our wall-mounted cabinets. The A21 cabinet can be a combination, can have a combination of dimmer and relay modules. So this is perfect for architectural or small performance lighting applications. It can function over 120 volts or 277 volts, 2-wire, 3-wire, or 4-wire loads. It is wall mounted. These are convection cooled, and there is no fan noise. So these can be mounted and are often mounted directly on the wall of the performance space itself. So there is no dedicated equipment room that is necessary, and there's no necessity for these being environmentally controlled differently than the performance space itself. Configuration protocols, we have DMX, Ethernet, and VisionNet control inputs. We can do contact closures for panic and fire alarm inputs. These can work with normal or emergency UL924 power applications. And we can communicate with the protocols of DMX, VisionNet, ShowNet, Streaming ACN, or ArtNet. The A21 dimming cabinets, depending upon the modules needed, do come in three sizes. These three sizes are a 3, 6, and a 9 module system that can contain 12, 24, or up to 36 dimmers using the quad modules. The 6 and 9 space cabinets can be ordered with an integral main breaker. These cabinets can be ordered either for 120 volt or 277 volt main services. The A21 processor is mounted directly at the bottom of the rack, which allows for controlling with the following methods: DMX, ShowNet, Streaming ACN, ArtNet, VisionNet, Fire Alarm, Panic. There's a simple menu-driven setup for local configuration, and it does allow for controlling IGBT dimmers for LEDs, and all dimmers now have a max and min setting for energy management. Active power management, available with the IGBT modules, allow for maximum current settings for load management of TRIAC installations. As mentioned earlier, the A21s are very attractive in many of the school, house of worship. We put them in restaurants because of their convection cooling. So there are no fans and no fan noise. All heat is removed by conduction to the enclosure or radiation from the enclosure surfaces. So there's no moving parts, which means less maintenance and guaranteed fail-safe cooling. So load types for the A21. Again, over either 120 volt or 277 volt. We've got incandescent, magnetic low voltage, electronic low voltage, LED line voltage, 2-wire fluorescent, 3-wire fluorescent, high lume, Echo 10, power spec HDF, 4-wire, or advanced Mark 7 4-wire. The racks themselves are installed with bypass jumpers for each dimmer module. This allows the electrical contractor to install the cabinet, the wiring, and test all circuits using the breakers on the front. Then the bypass jumpers are removed when the A21 dimmer module is installed, often at a later point in the installation process. Another product we have, which is becoming increasingly popular, is our contact relay panel. The popularity of this is due to the fact that as we move to LED-based systems, there are no dimmers needed for many of the performance spaces that we're now controlling. So it's a compact wall mount relay panel. It does have space for 12, 24, 36, or 48 relays per rack. There are single and double pole relays rated for 20 amps for either 120 120, 277, or 347 volt. It does have an astronomical time clock for timed events. Multiple cabinets can be used in a master-slave mode where only the master needs to have the processor. So with that, two cabinets can be mounted, one in master and slave mode, for a total of 96 relays or dimmer per processor. They can be either main lugs or branch fed. These also can fully integrate with our A21 dimmer cabinets, so it is not uncommon to have the contact panel and the A21 panel working together within the same system. Again, they have panic and fire alarm inputs. They can work with normal or UL924 applications and all the same protocols as the A21 cabinet. A little bit about the relays. They are Panasonic high quality relays specifically designed for lighting control. They are mechanically held so they do not drop out if the power is lost. The single pole relays utilize one space where the double utilizes two. There's a mechanical indicator to show if the relay is currently open or closed, and they may be locally switched on or off even when the control electronics are removed. Probably one of the best kept secrets in our industry are the R21 powered raceways. This is a perfect application for installations where it's preferred to have no wall mounted or floor mounted dimmer cabinet. These are a powered raceway that use our convection cooled IGBT dimming or relays, and it is fully integrated with the circuit strip. So this is all completely installed at the electric overhead. There's no need for additional cabinets with the exception of a standard switched panel for power. It does function the same way as the A21 and the contact cabinets in that there are electronics for controlling the configuration and the output that can be mounted on the deck in an equipment rack rather than being inaccessible overhead. They are completely silent. It's integrated with a connector strip, and this allows for a much simpler installation because it eliminates duplication and trims down the installation costs. So it uses IGBT dimming with no fans, so there's no heat, there's no fan noise. 1,000 microsecond rise time for quiet loads. Low harmonics. There's a focus button on each dimmer, so if you have an operator up at the lighting position in a lift, they can use that focus button to focus the fixtures without the need for an operator at the console. You do have a choice of power connections. It uses standard DMX or DMX over Ethernet. These can be built with up to 96 dimmers per raceway, so they come in lengths of between 8 and 96 feet. They are only 6.5 pounds per foot, yet it takes up the same space as a standard connector strip. So some additional technical information. Again, I'll provide this as a PDF for anyone who's interested. Just email me after the session so that you can have this information. Now we also have an S21 portable strip, similar to the R21, except that this is simply a portable strip. It is not custom designed, but it does support the different types of modules. So that can be a dimming module, can be relay. Where you can load up the dimmer for 20 amps. You can load up either side of the dimmer up to 20 amps when used alone, or if you use them together, it will need to combine for up to 20 amps. There is a focus button. If the module is off, tap the button, we'll put it on full. If the module is on, tap it to turn it off. Or you can just press and hold the button and it will ramp up. If you release the button, then it will stop at whatever level it is, and the level will remain until it's either turned off or the load is taken over by a console. So if you wind up leaving it up and you come down out of the lift, you don't have to go back up. Just go to your console and take control. So the relay modules contain a 20 amp dual with a 20 amp power. It is shared between the two outlets. So the DMX output is locally adjacent to each load receptacle to control many of the LED products that we have. So there is a power supply for up to 4 tunable white RGB or RGB-AW luminaires. There's push button setup for 8 or 16-bit operation and the option to add an intensity channel as needed. What is brilliant about the R21 main power feed is that you simply count up your dimmers or modules, determine how many 3-pole circuit breakers you needed, and determine the size of your panel board. So the wiring that is needed for these is quite different than what would be typical for a floor-mounted dimming system. With a typical C21 or EC21 rack, if it's fully populated, you'll have 192 load circuits with 384 connectors plus the grounds, which equals to 1,536 terminations. With the R21 dimming system, you still have 192 load circuits, but you only need 128 conductors in the ground, and that's 512 terminations. So it's the same number of load circuits with 2/3 less wiring and 2/3 less termination. So contractors love this. It simplifies the installation, speeds up the installation, and reduces the installation cost. So common neutrals are only really an issue in panel-based system, as each circuit requires its own hot, neutral, and ground going to each receptacle. If you do share the neutrals between two circuits and those are on opposite phases, then you're going to get unexpected results. Experienced contractors can share neutrals as long as they aren't shared between opposite sides of the phase without any issue. Usually a retrofit where additional wiring can't be run out of receptacles is where this comes into play. This is not an issue with new installation. The R21 shares neutrals only because they are fed with 3-phase 20 amp breakers for every 3 modules. Each breaker is on phase A, B, and C with the neutral. So only one ground is needed for the entire strip. This is a specific feature of the IGBT dimming, and it is not an electromechanical device like an SCR dimmer. So the idea behind these raceways has been part of the S21 and the R21 since they originally developed back in '91, and again, the big advantage is the reduction of wiring and termination by 2/3 compared to a normal dimmer rack. Occasionally, one will run into a situation where the system has been engineered for all relays, yet because of the house lights that have been chosen, a dimmer is needed into the system. So it's very easy to add a LIGHTPACK. So this is going to provide a quiet IGBT dimmer wherever it's needed. It is a 1200 watt model. It does DMX in and out, and this can dim incandescent, low voltage, and line voltage LED loads. In cases where you need it to match up with an LED fixture, it can mount right on the fixture yoke, or it can come with wall or pipe mounting brackets. So we have a question. Do you have to worry about load balancing with the sharing of the neutrals? I don't believe you do. I know Alan Luxford is on this call. He may have more information about that than I do.
We try to balance the load in Europe for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Alan. I do think it's fairly common to try and balance the load, but I'll try and look for a little more information on that for you, Robert. Another question. Do you have a relay and dimmer pack combined selectable at the same channel? I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So a relay and dimmer pack combined, we certainly have modules that have relays and dimmer combined, and they are switchable. They're switchable at the module. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. I hope I am.
This is Vasos from Cyprus, and what I mean is that sometimes we need a theater that They use conventional lights and also LED lighting fixtures, and they want to choose from one channel if it's gonna be, let's say, a relay pack or a dimmer module. I mean, if you have a selectable, the same channel.
Again, I know we have combination modules. Alan, do you know if they're on the same channel if you change your selection? Is it the same DMX address?
Sorry.
We said these are double channels.
Can you repeat the question, Bobby? Sorry.
Yes. Sometimes you have to use, let's say, a 24 channel dimmer or relay pack. I mean, this is a double channel and can be selectable from the dimmer pack.
I don't think we do that. We only supply the wall rack over here, which is 24 single channel dimmers. They are dual modules and dual components in the racks, and they are selectable as single channels or dual channels.
Okay. Because now in the new theaters, they want to have the option of using conventional lights if they have an old system from conventional lights. But again, when they replace with a LED lights, they want to use again the same.
Right. Well, you would use the power through modules, which would go into an EC21 rack, which can be selectable on the front panel of the module to be a conventional dimmer for tungsten loads, or you can switch them to be a bypass non-dim.
Okay, that's what I mean. Thanks
Yep.
a lot.
EC21.
Yeah, that would be the solution for that.
What about do you have RCBA protection on the dimmers?
Yes, on an EC21 you can have individual modules with RCBO protection. Yeah.
Okay, and one last question. Is it possible to have lockable RCB? Because, we have the British standard here in Cyprus, and they are asking to have lockable RCBO on the main or on the output of the channels.
They will be on the output of each dimmer channel on the module.
Okay, and could be lockable, I mean, with a key?
No, they are true RCBO circuit breakers.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you very much, Alan, for jumping in on some of those more European-centric questions. Appreciate that. Another question from Robert, or a comment, maybe it's for versatility. What are the relay IGBT modules called, and can I purchase them and put them in my C21 racks? We would need to check and see what you have installed, but I can certainly tell you that we have these combination modules that are for the C21 racks. So I think there would need to be some checking about the way your rack is wired to make sure that could be accommodated. And another question is, the cabinet is lockable. Every C21, the EC21 cabinet comes with a lockable door, a lockable screen door on the front. So I hope that's answering that question. And these are all great questions, and I appreciate them. And again, thank you, Alan, for being here to help with some of the answers. And thanks very much for attending.